70%. If you are leading a massive corporate transformation right now, or just trying to overhaul a struggling department, the research says you have a 70% chance of failing completely.
Yeah, I mean, it is a brutal statistic,
Yeah.
and it frankly haunts leadership teams globally.
But why, though? Like, think about it. Usually when we talk about fixing something that's broken, there is this expectation of mechanical precision.
Right, like repairing a machine.
Exactly. It's like taking your car to the mechanic. The engine makes a weird clicking sound. The mechanic runs a diagnostic, finds the faulty spark plug, swaps it out, and suddenly, you are back on the road.
Smooth sailing.
Right. It's clean. It's binary. So I guess the question is, why doesn't that mechanical logic work when you apply it to, say, a Fortune 500 company or even just a mid-sized startup?
Well, because human systems simply do not behave like combustion engines. I mean, we deeply crave that linear, predictable logic, right? We want to just point to a broken gear and replace it.
Right. Here's the bad employee. Let's swap them out.
Yeah, no, exactly. But when you step into a sprawling hospital system or a corporate office, you are stepping into a landscape that is famously murky and complex and just deeply emotional.
And that is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Sure.
If you are listening right now, whether you're prepping for a make-or-break leadership meeting, trying to turn around a specific team, or you're just insanely curious about why corporate changes so often crash and burn, you are in the right place.
You really are. We've got an incredibly rich stack of sources to synthesize today.
Yeah, our mission today is to tackle this massive, complex stack of research on organizational development, or OD. We are going to cut through the corporate noise, skip the textbook jargon, and get right to the actual mechanics of how human systems change.
We'll be looking at everything from, historical analyses of OD's origins, all the way to cutting-edge research on how social constructionism is completely redefining the modern workplace.
Okay, so let's start right at the bedrock. In pulling through the architects of change text from our sources, there is this key insight that immediately jumps out.
Oh, the prerequisite for change.
Yeah. It argues that before any grand theory of change can be applied, before you can restructure a single department, there is a non-negotiable baseline requirement, which they call trustworthy leadership.
Right, which sounds great on paper.
Exactly. And the text lists these core traits: integrity, transparency, empathy, vision, and adaptability. Now, okay, let's unpack this. Let's unpack this because my immediate reaction is a bit of skepticism.
Sure, it sounds a bit fluffy.
Right. Are these just the standard, feel-good buzzwords you see on a motivational poster in a break room? Like, are these just basic good boss behaviors, or do they actually function as the literal mechanics of moving a massive corporate ship?
I love that you are skeptical about that because it is so easy to just dismiss those words as corporate fluff. But what's fascinating here is that the research treats these not as abstract moral virtues, but as hard operational necessities.
Wait, really? Hard necessities?
Absolutely. The sources are very clear that these traits are operationalized through 7 specific observable practices. It's not just a vibe, it's action.
Give me an example then. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon at the office?
Take delegating resources.
Yeah.
In a low-trust environment, a boss might say, go fix this problem, but they hoard the budget and force you to get 3 signatures for every minor decision.
Oh, I've been there. It's miserable.
Right. That isn't delegation. That's just setting someone up to fail. Trustworthy leadership actually means handing over the actual budget and the autonomy to act.
So it's about real empowerment, not just the illusion of it.
Yeah. It means developing talent through real mentorship and demonstrating visible accountability, as in the leader standing up and taking the blame publicly when a team experiment fails.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you don't see that very often.
No, you don't. And the text argues that without this bedrock, the actual theories of change we're about to discuss simply collapse. Trust is the friction that allows the tires to grip the road.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, without it, your change initiative just spins in place, no matter how brilliant your strategy is. People just won't buy in.
So it's the absolute prerequisite for the actual mechanics of change.
Yeah.
Which perfectly transitions us to how we used to think about those mechanics.
Oh, the historical stuff.
Yeah, because to understand how modern organizations transform, we really have to look at how we historically assumed they changed. Take us back to the roots. Where does OD even start?
Well, we have to journey back to the 1930s and 1940s to a brilliant social psychologist named Kurt Lewin.
Kurt Lewin. Okay.
Lewin is widely considered the founding father of OD. He was just obsessed with group dynamics, and one of his massive contributions was a concept called force field analysis.
Force field analysis sounds like sci-fi.
It does, but it's very practical. Imagine a horizontal line representing your company's status quo. Pushing down from the top are forces promoting change, so market pressures, new technology, things like that.
Okay, pushing down.
Right. But pushing up from the bottom are forces resisting change, fear of layoffs, entrenched culture, maybe a lack of budget. Lewin said change only happens when you actively alter that balance.
So you have to tip the scales.
Exactly. And usually he found it's better to do that by reducing the resisting forces rather than just pushing harder from the top down.
Which led to his incredibly famous three-step model.
Precisely. Unfreezing, changing, and refreezing.
Okay, break that down for us.
First, you have to destabilize the current state, unfreeze it. You have to make people realize the old way just won't work anymore. Then you introduce the new behaviors or structures. That's the change phase.
And the refreezing.
Finally, you have to lock those new behaviors in place so people don't backslide. You refreeze it so the new way becomes the standard.
So it's literally like an ice cube. You take a square block of ice, you melt it down into water, you pour it into a star-shaped mold, and you freeze it again. Clean, simple, done.
That is the exact mentality. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this ice cube metaphor birthed what we now call the diagnostic OD era.
Diagnostic OD.
Right. If you look at the models that came out of this, like the Nadler-Tushman congruence model or Weisbord's six-box model, they are visually fascinating.
Lots of charts and graphs.
Oh, massive diagrams, full of boxes and arrows mapping out inputs, transformational processes, and outputs.
Right, going back to our car mechanic metaphor from the start of the deep dive.
That's it exactly. The fundamental belief was that an organization was essentially a biological system or a complex machine.
Just cogs and gears.
Yeah. The prevailing thought was that an expert consultant could walk in with a clipboard, gather totally objective data, diagnose the broken box or the misaligned arrow, and just apply a targeted fix.
Like, oh, I see the problem. You survey the employees, find the exact spot where communication is breaking down, restructure the org chart, and boom, the machine is repaired.
Boom, repaired. It was highly rational, heavily planned, and deeply reliant on the idea that there is one singular objective reality inside the company that can be measured and fixed.
But treating organizations like slow-moving biological systems or rigid machines eventually hit a massive wall.
A huge wall.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because we hit the 1970s and 1980s, and the global economy suddenly accelerated at a terrifying pace.
It was unprecedented.
You have intense global competition, severe oil shocks, rampant inflation, and massive technological shifts. Suddenly, Lewin's slow, participative, let's carefully melt the ice cube and talk about it methods started looking dangerously outdated.
Yeah, they look like a luxury that companies could no longer afford.
So what happened?
This triggered a massive visceral backlash against traditional OD. The focus completely shifted away from small group behavioral interventions and humanist values. Instead, it became all about rapid, aggressive organizational transformation.
The corporate raider era.
Exactly. This birthed the culture excellence movement. You had management gurus like Tom Peters famously declaring, "Destruction is cool."
Wow. That is quite the pivot from let's carefully unfreeze the system.
It was a revolution, and a somewhat violent one conceptually. The ice cube model was fiercely criticized. Scholars like Rosabeth Moss Kanter argued that the ice cube model was quaint and static.
What did she suggest instead?
Well, she pointed out that organizations are actually fluid entities. They never actually refreeze. The environment is changing way too fast for anything to stay frozen.
Makes sense. The market never stops.
Well, right. So change in the 80s became fast, it became brutal, it was heavily top-down, and it was laser-focused on the bottom line over any humanistic concerns. Executives adopted a slash-and-burn mentality.
It's just ruthless efficiency.
Yeah. You restructure, you close down factories overnight, you implement massive layoffs, and you just mandate a brand new corporate culture from the corner office.
Okay, but let me challenge that for a second. Did that actually work? I mean, if you just mandate change from a spreadsheet, close factories, and fire people, don't you just get temporary compliance instead of actual sustainable transformation?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, people will do what they're told to keep their jobs, but they aren't exactly co-creating a bright new future.
Right. You are hitting on the exact friction that sent the entire field of OD into a crisis. You get exactly what you just described. Mere compliance, pervasive fear, and ultimately a systemic failure to adapt.
So the slash and burn didn't actually fix the company's long term.
Not at all. The fast, dictatorial approach completely failed to capture the complex political and cultural realities of human networks. When you try to force a change down the throat of a complex social system, the system pushes back, often in invisible ways.
They nod in the meeting and then ignore the memo.
Yeah, no, exactly. It turns out you can't just email a memo mandating a new culture. And this realization, the catastrophic failure of the slash and burn top-down mandates, was the catalyst for a massive intellectual renaissance in the 90s and 2000s.
And this renaissance is what caused scholars and practitioners to completely rethink the actual nature of reality within a company. This is the pivotal aha moment of our deep dive.
It absolutely is the turning point. The field shifted away from diagnostic OD, which, remember, was all about finding the one objective truth, the broken spark plug in the machine.
Right.
It shifted to what is now called dialogic OD. This is rooted in social constructionism.
Social constructionism, that sounds heavy.
It just means that the core realization here is that organizations aren't biological machines to be tuned. They are meaning-making systems.
Okay, let me translate this for you listening. So instead of an engine to be repaired, a company is really just a giant group chat.
A group chat, I love that.
And the reality of the company is just whatever everyone is saying it is.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. If the reality of the organization is socially constructed through everyday interactions, the jerks in the hallway, the complaints on Slack, the tone of a meeting, then the company is literally made of conversations.
Just an ongoing dialogue.
Therefore, in dialogic OD, you don't try to change behavior directly through new HR rules or punitive incentive structures. You change the conversations. You change the narratives.
Because if you change the narrative, the behavior follows.
Yes. If you change what the group chat is talking about and how they talk about it, the behavior changes naturally as a byproduct.
That completely flips the script. You aren't fixing a problem, you are rewriting a story.
Exactly. And our sources detail specific tools that emerged from this shift, like appreciative inquiry, open space, and World Cafe.
Let's talk about appreciative inquiry. How does that work?
Well, rather than starting a consulting engagement with a problem like asking, what is broken here, which instantly makes everyone defensive and paranoid, these methods start with an opportunity.
Oh, that's clever.
Appreciative inquiry, for example, focuses on discovering the absolute best of what currently exists. You ask a team to detail their most successful project ever, and you use the DNA of that success to imagine what could be.
So you aren't gathering data to find a fact. You are gathering stories to raise collective awareness.
Precisely. You're shifting the focus from deficit to surplus.
The sources mentioned a specific technique here that I found really wild, the circular question. Explain why this works, because it sounds almost absurd on the surface.
The power of the circular question is phenomenal. In the old diagnostic OD, a consultant might ask a linear question like, how long has communication been an issue in the marketing department?
Which just gets a dry, factual answer, or makes people point fingers.
Right. But in dialogic OD, a consultant might ask a circular question like, if this organization were an animal, what type of animal would it be?
I love that, because if someone says, we're a sloth, you immediately know so much more about the culture than any 1 to 5 scale employee survey could ever tell you.
Precisely. Or imagine someone says, we are a hive of bees, but we have 3 queens fighting for control.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is incredibly revealing.
It immediately breaks their defensive analytical thinking. It taps into their subconscious narratives. It unleashes their imagination. It allows people to express complex, socially constructed realities in a way that spreadsheets simply can't capture.
Because they aren't trying to sound corporate anymore.
Exactly. The goal isn't to find the truth, but to give them the language to co-create a new reality together.
So if the reality of a company is just a web of conversations, then the boundary of the company is kind of an illusion, right? Like the conversation doesn't magically stop at the employee break room. It bleeds directly into how those employees talk to the customer.
That is the precise cognitive leap, and it changes everything about how a business operates. If the company is a continuous conversation, you can no longer view your customer as just a passive target.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How does this apply to the daily operations of a business? Because the sources outline a massive shift here, moving from what they call goods-dominant logic to service-dominant logic.
Yes, a crucial distinction.
I want to make sure we ground this. If goods-dominant logic is the traditional model like broadcasting a message at the consumer, making a product in a vacuum, pricing it, and selling it, then what is service-dominant logic?
Well, if goods-dominant logic is broadcasting, service-dominant logic is adding the consumer to the group chat and letting them type back.
Oh, I like that.
Value isn't in the thing itself. Value is co-created with the customer in real time. The customer is an active participant. To do that effectively, an organization has to be incredibly agile, dialogic, and deeply connected to its stakeholders.
The Architects of Change source gives us 3 specific, powerful examples of this in action. And I want to look at how they actually mechanically did this rather than just listing them off. Let's start with the tech company example. They were in a hyper-fast landscape and were really struggling to survive.
Right, and the traditional diagnostic move would be to fire half the engineers and hire cheaper ones.
The slash and burn approach.
Exactly. But instead, they use agile work processes. Now let's look at why agile works through a dialogic lens. Agile isn't just a software tool, it forces a daily conversation, the stand-up.
The daily huddle.
Right. By tearing down the silos and putting the engineers in the same daily huddle as the customer service reps, they didn't just increase efficiency. They fundamentally changed the narrative the engineers were telling themselves about who they were building the software for.
The group chat expanded.
Exactly. They were co-creating at the front lines.
That makes total sense. Now, let's look at the retail example because this one threw me. A struggling retail chain needed a comprehensive transformation to enhance the customer experience. But the source says they introduced something called service learning in the local community.
Service learning, yes.
Wait. Are you saying they made cashiers go plant trees or paint community centers on the weekend so they could sell more shirts? How does that actually work?
I know. It sounds like a disconnected PR stunt. But let's look at the mechanics of why it works. Service learning is when you combine traditional instruction with meaningful community service.
Okay.
It's not about planting trees to sell shirts. It's about changing the internal narrative of the employee. Imagine an employee who feels like a replaceable cog, just scanning barcodes all day.
Very goods dominant. Just a machine part.
Exactly. But then you take them and have them apply their supply chain skills to help a local food bank optimize their logistics. They co-create value outside the building.
Oh, wow.
When they return to the cash register, their internal narrative has shifted. They have seen the organization's social impact. They feel trusted. This experiential learning rewrites their reality, resulting in a highly engaged, customer-centric workforce.
That is profound. It's not training, it's identity building.
Identity building, exactly.
And that brings us to the healthcare example. A prominent hospital system facing low morale, high turnover, and, worst of all, suboptimal patient outcomes. Now, this is a life or death organizational failure. You can't just put up a motivational poster to fix patient care.
No, you really can't. And again, they didn't just fire the administration and bring in a spreadsheet consultant to cut costs.
That was the root issue.
They had a toxic environment, nurses blaming doctors, administration hiding data. Just a broken conversation.
How do you want to freeze that?
By changing the geography of the conversation. Instead of sending out a corporate memo about improving patient care, they completely altered the day-to-day operations to force different interactions.
Wait, what do you mean by changing the geography?
They moved people out of their physical silos and put them into collaborative, non-hierarchical spaces to solve problems. When a nurse and a doctor are forced to share stories about patient outcomes over coffee, rather than just passing charts back and forth.
The conversation changes.
Right. The narrative shifts from survival and blame to empathy and care. By aligning the physical and conversational reality with those trustworthy leadership values we discussed at the start, they radically improved patient outcomes.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We have gone on an incredible journey today.
We really have.
We started by looking at organizations as frozen blocks of ice that needed to be mechanically melted down, reshaped, and refrozen.
The old diagnostic machine.
Right. And then we watched that slow diagnostic model get bulldozed by the slash-and-burn corporate raiders of the 1980s, who tried to force change with top-down mandates and ended up with nothing but fear and temporary compliance.
A complete failure to adapt.
And finally, we arrived at the dialogic OD renaissance, the realization that a company isn't a machine, but a living, breathing web of conversations. And that by using imagination, changing the narrative geography and co-creating value, you can literally rewrite the reality of the organization itself.
And this raises an important question, one that brings us full circle.
What's
We often think of organizational development as a tool purely for increasing corporate profits or market share. But if you look back at Kurt Lewin, the man who started all of this in the 1930s and 40s.
the force field analysis guy?
Exactly. His original goal wasn't just to make factories more efficient. Lewin was a Jewish refugee who fled Nazi Germany.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He invented these concepts of action research and participative management to resolve deep social conflicts, to eradicate racial and religious discrimination, and ultimately to defeat totalitarianism.
That is incredible.
He fundamentally believed that democratizing human systems was how you built a better world.
Which leaves us with a final, profound thought for you to take away today. We've seen that dialogic OD tools like appreciative inquiry, circular questioning, and fundamentally changing the conversational bedrock are powerful enough to save a failing hospital system or rescue a massive retail chain.
Powerful tools indeed.
So if society itself is just one giant, socially constructed, meaning-making system, could these exact same organizational tools be the key to solving the massive, complex global crises we face today?
Things like climate change, resource depletion, or deepening political divides.
Exactly. If our global reality is built on the stories we tell and the conversations we share, maybe we don't need a top-down mandate to fix the world. Maybe we just need to start hosting a better conversation.